This is the Royal Calf. I know the Orient supporters amongst you will be more than familiar with this place. This is where everyone goes before a match on a Saturday. So just crossed Leighton High Road here, right where the Brook runs beneath the road and enters Coronation Gardens. This was obviously on the route of my Brook walk, which I usually do groups of a couple of times a year. How are you all? How's everyone doing? It felt like spring was coming out, wasn't it? When I did that Capitol Ring walk and I had my baseball cap on and not the winter hat, and it was fantastic. It's freezing cold today. It's just over a week later. Is it a week later or is it 2 weeks later? I'm losing track of time, but it's really, really cold. What we're doing today actually is we are going to finally do part 2 of the epic Q&A video. And this will be a combination of questions that I answered when I did that original Q&A recording, whenever it was, 3 weeks ago. And I could only upload an hour and a quarter's worth, or however long that video was. Over an hour, wasn't it? So I've got some I recorded then, and I'm going to answer a few more of them now. Some of them I'm answering for the second time because I did loads. I did something like, I recorded an extra hours worth of answers sat in my study, and that's not really the vibe I want to get across. So we could go for a little stroll down here through Coronation Gardens and answer more of your questions. So let's crack on with it. This is a brilliant question from AFC Man UK. Not sure, is that Man United? I'm not sure what's going on with the name there, but this is a great question. Said, hello John, obviously they're fictional places, but what are your thoughts on doing a Rivers of London walk that includes some of the more noteworthy locations in London, based on the novels by Ben Aaronovitch? This could be great for tourists and locals alike. That's a fascinating idea. They're testing out the Tanners. The Leighton Orient football ground, by the way, is just there. So sorry, interrupted my flow slightly. That's a lovely idea. What I will do is I'll link below, and I'm sure AFC Man United UK, you've seen my Lost Rivers walks. In fact, here's an interesting thing. When I met Ben, I've met Ben a couple of times now, and he mentioned that he has watched some of those videos, and I think he said he even used one of them or a couple of them for research, one of the books. I think the Wander Walk. And we were going to do a walk together. We've suggested it a couple of times. I hope that happens. So I imagine you don't mean the Lost Rivers, because I think I've probably walked all the Lost Rivers in the books, in the London location. I'm not sure if there's any that I haven't walked. So I'll link to those below. But then in addition to that, I think one of the locations that I'd really like to go to, and I think I mentioned this in the previous Q&A video, is the source of the Thames. And that's the image of that Ben paints is amazing. But yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a few pubs. I think that some of the pub where all the demi-mondes meet near the old Tyburn Gallows would be a good spot to go to. I did think about that. That's a great idea. If you've got, by the way though, but if you can think of those locations and pop them in below, that would be amazing. I think there is a wiki page, isn't there, for the books that will have locations on it. That's a great idea though. Thank you for that. Tell us your thoughts on Camberwell. That name is a name I can't pronounce. It's just like, tell us your thoughts on Camberwell. I haven't been to Camberwell for ages actually. That's a really good, it's not in a video, so I should do a Camberwell video. That's a great idea. And I haven't done it yet. Camberwell for me used to be Camberwell Green. I had a mate who lived on Camberwell Green in those Peabody flats there, and I always found Camberwell Green traffic choked. I'll be honest with you, that was my thoughts on Camberwell, is trying to get across the road to and from his flat without getting squashed. That is my primary association with Camberwell. Camberwell, I used to really like it way back when I first, my first early years in London. I always found Camberwell was a little bit posh actually, almost. A little bit villagey and posh, but I do like it, but that should be on a walk, you're completely right. And this is one of the real treasures of Leighton here. I can't ignore as I walk through. The statue of Laurie Cunningham, the great Laurie Cunningham. Some people rate him as the best player to play for England, and we didn't see enough of him really in an England shirt, did we? But he signed for Real Madrid, and I think he's the first English footballer to sign for Real Madrid. I think it actually says on the statue here. And I think he tragically died in a car accident, but people who saw him play say he was truly one of the greats. Yeah, and he was the first black footballer to play for England at senior level, and the first British player to transfer to Real Madrid. He started his career at Leighton Orient, 74 to 77. Let's go here past the Orient ground. Henning Balstad Pedersen asks, what's the most stunning place you've ever been? It's not actually the Leighton Orient ground. I do love going to the Leighton Orient ground. By the way, I'm realising my eyeline's straying to the fold-out screen here. And there's some sort of match going on there, probably kids playing. That's fantastic. The most stunning place I've ever been, I think it would have to be Udaipur in India. It's like a lake city, and there's it's built around a lake, and there's palaces, the water palaces in the middle of the lake. One particular one, which is a 5-star hotel now, and I think it was featured in one of the James Bond movies. You'll see it in kind of like, you'll have seen photographs of it almost certainly in roundups of the most beautiful places in the world. And it really is. It is unbelievably stunning. And I went there in '97 when I went backpacking with my wife. Thankfully I have old VHS footage and photographs of it. And it was incredible. It really was one of those places that just, you can't believe it. And we were obviously traveling on a budget, and we had this amazing hotel room that was right on the edge of the lake. So we were on the top of this building with a bit of terrace outside of our room, and this beautiful bed, and these kind of...
Check out this place that we are staying in. It is untold. And the bathroom is so unreal. Look at this. Isn't that unbelievable?
I want to say, like, these very ornate windows that just looked over the lake, just straight over the lake, straight looking at the palace. I think it cost us something like £3 a night or £2 a night to stay there. And it was just so unimaginably beautiful. And one of the other places would have also on that trip in India was Jaisalmer, which was incredible as well. Again, we had a wall in the outside, we had a room in the outside wall of the fort.
And there's the fort over there where we're staying. It's amazing. And this is the old city here within the walls.
It's just in the middle of the Thar Desert. That was also stunning. And Henning also asked, why did it become Berlin and not Copenhagen when I did the trip with my son nearly a year ago? That was in April last year. And no, it was just simply I gave Ollie a choice. I said, where do you want to go, Berlin or Copenhagen? And he said Berlin. I think it's because of the history of Berlin, which we encountered as we went there. It's a really incredible experience going to Berlin. That trip was brilliant, and we both think about it all the time. In fact, we were talking about it yesterday. It was an amazing trip. I'd still like to go to Copenhagen, but Berlin is amazing. There you go. Just sit on this bench a bit. It's a little bit easier to concentrate on the questions if you're not avoiding cyclists and cars. Next question. There's so many great questions. I'm glad I'm getting to these again or re-answering them in the outside. Diane says, love your channel. When's your next book coming out? Now, I appreciate that question. I probably did answer it in the last video, but actually I've got a dual agenda today, because I've got one last bit of the book that I need to rewrite. So I started writing the book 10 years ago, in 2013. And I'm not only, as I'm going through the final edits of the book, let's look at this van driving through the park, doing council work, vital work. Now I'm doing the edits on the book, I'm realising some of the things, I've tried to update the book as I've gone along, but there are some things, particularly around here, which are now a bit out of date. And there's one particular detail that I missed out. I don't know how I missed it out. And I want to go back and have a look at it. And I'm going to write that into the book. So you're almost witnessing part of the final writing process. This is the final bit. I'm going to write an introduction. But other than that, I just need to fill in a little bit of detail around the levelling ponds down here underneath the Leighton Bird Box sign. So we'll go down and have a look at that, because there's something I'm not sure about. Well, I'm not 100% sure. I can't find the note I made about it, so that's good. So I've still got the final edits to make to chapter 2, where I'm basically just updating it, doing my final pass, making sure I'm really happy that this is the version that will go to print. And then I just have to do a bit of copy editing on it, which I've got someone helping me with that side of it. And then the book cover, I received the rough draft of the book cover on Friday. It's amazing, I'm so excited. And it's the designer who did the covers of the Rivers of London books, the Ben Aaronovitch books, Patrick. He's doing the cover. And his first draft is just his first quick scamp is brilliant. So I'm so excited about that. I'm so excited to share that with you. So what are we now? What's the date today? Is the 26th of February. Realistically, it's going to be 2 months, isn't it, till you can be able to hold a copy in your hands at the soonest. So I'm aiming at the end of April. I know this has gone on for so long and it's frustrating for me, but getting frustrating doesn't help. I just have to just take the next step and take the next step and take the next step. And because I'm self-publishing it, obviously I have a lot more work to do than I had before. I would have delivered this manuscript to a publisher 18 months ago if I was working with a publisher. Obviously I'd have still had a lot of work to do on it, but there would have been someone pushing me to the next stage, the next stage, the next stage, whereas it is working on my own, it's just much slower, but it's exciting. I'm really excited. We're so close, and yeah, well, that's going to be a good part of today's Q&A. It's a little bit of a walk, a little bit of a research walk there. Thank you for that question, Diane. Gregory James says, if you could walk around the world, what route would you take and why? Brilliant question. If I could walk around the world, what route would I take and why? I'd head south, Gregory, because I've never been to Africa. I've never been to Africa, I've never been to South America, so I'd head south, down through Africa, and then what would I do next? I think I'd have to get on a boat, wouldn't I, to India, and then go that way. India. Do I have to go across? I've never been to Western Australia. Go across Australia and New Zealand, then across the Pacific to the United States. That misses out so much, doesn't it? But then I could go across Australia, go across on a boat to Chile, and then up through South America, maybe go all the way up North America, and then through Alaska, Greenland, back to Europe. It's a good journey, long journey. Richard Smith says, are there any parts of London that you used to not like, but now like, and vice versa? For me, I used to not like the Barbican, and now I like it. Well, I was never that familiar with South London, really. I lived in New Cross for 6 months. That was really my experience. I used to go and visit people from time to time, but I never really developed much of an understanding of South London. So I'm really learning to appreciate South London as a whole a lot more. And yeah, across the board actually. So it's not that I didn't like it, a little bit like the Camberwell question. You know, there's bits where I was like, oh, it's all full of traffic, and I couldn't appreciate it. Now I appreciate South London a lot more than I used to. I used to have a little bit of a difficult relationship with the sort of Kilburn area, sort of around Kilburn, Cricklewood, Kilburn, and that's an area I wasn't mad keen on. I stayed there for about a month a long time ago, and I found it a little bit problematic. Quite rough, you know, and difficult and aggressive. There was a lot of aggression around, I found around Kilburn and Cricklewood. So now I really like it up there. I did a project up in Kensal Rise, and that changed my relationship with the area a bit. Chris says, we want to visit and travel with a heavy power chair. I've always wondered about the handicapped accessibility of London and Britain in general, and what we could do to make our trip more accessible. That's a great question, Chris. I hope actually someone who has experience of that will answer in the comments below. But all I know is there's a lot of work to try and make London a lot more accessible, but there are still places where they're not. I mean, look for step-free access on the tube, because for example, we don't have any step-free access to and from Leytonstone Station. So the tube is getting better and better. The big public buildings, places like the Barbican, like the South Bank Centre, they are a lot more accessible than they used to be. Also the big galleries, but that's a really good question. I hope somebody who knows about this will give a more detailed answer in the comments below. But certainly trains and buses are quite accessible now. So we're getting there. It's not ideal, we're getting there. There's an interesting comment that kind of comes in the form of a question, but I just thought it's really interesting, a little bit of history. The type of, you know, we have lots of different types of histories that are embedded in family history. And I think probably a lot of people do come to my channel because they're doing a bit of family research maybe, or I'm not sure which way around it goes. It comes from Margaret Copley, and she says, good morning, John. I teach family history in Australia, and one of our stories of Benjamin Cohen of 8 Hackney Road, London. He was wrongly convicted in 1836, spent 6 months on a hulk and sent to Tasmania. His story is heart-wrenching. There were warehouses on the river at that time. Looked on Google but not sure where they were. would be wonderful. You could walk around that area. Thanks, Margaret Copley. Margaret, that's very non-specific in a way, actually. So I thought you were talking about warehouses around Hackney Road. There were lots of warehouses along the Thames, but where do you mean? So I've walked extensively around Wapping, Limehouse, Shadwell, so I'll link to those videos below. There's a big Wapping waterfront. I think the prison hulks were moored all along the Thames really. I think quite a few of them are a bit further out maybe. Were they sort of as far out as Tilbury? There's walks along the waterfront at Tilbury, although I don't think there would have been warehouses at Tilbury. You might mean on the south side, around Bermondsey. There's some walks along Bermondsey and Rotherhithe on my channel, and I'll link to those below. But if you can follow up with a comment on this video, if you know of the stretch that you refer to, I could have a look, and if I haven't done it, I could walk that area. There are still some old of the warehouses around parts of the Thames around central London. But yeah, it may have been around if you look at the Neckinger walk as well that I did, you see some of the old warehouses there around Bermondsey that may be the ones you refer to. But yeah, it's a tragic, sad story, isn't it? Talking of stories, there's one on this board here about Jack Cornwall. Should we have a look? Just so we can mix up the questions with a little bit of content, yeah? What I'll do is I'll post a link below to the maybe the Wikipedia page about Jack Cornwall, but he received the VC. He was only 16 and he died during the Battle of Jutland in the First World War, and he was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross. He was from Leighton, and there's a little park that's named after him now, and his story is really quite yeah, it's an amazing story. He manned his gun on the ship to the very end, and he was absolutely shredded with shrapnel by the time he died. But he was a very brave young man and a person of Leighton. I think he went to George Mitchell's school, I believe. Really interesting comment from Izzy here, which is actually a suggestion for a walk really, because I haven't seen any videos of you in North Essex. The Colne Valley is stunning, and it's quite. I'll put the question on the screen here. Not really. There's a couple. I mean, I suppose I did a video right on the North Essex border actually with the wonderful Dave Binns and Gary Laming in the Bartlow Hills, but I think actually maybe that's Cambridgeshire, but it changed that perception of Essex being a very flat county, because there were a lot of hills, although the Bartlow Hills are artificial, they are burial mounds. But yeah, but anyway, Izzy recommends a walk along the Colne Valley. It is on my list, it has been for a while. It's quite a long walk there, it's about 20 odd miles, isn't it, to do the whole thing. And so because with the 1.5 hour train journey from London, it makes that a full midsummer's day. But it's been on my list for about 3 or 4 years, Izzy, and I intend to get up to North Essex. I love the county of Essex for walking, and particularly on the borders of Suffolk. I did walk along the Stour. Have you seen that video? That's North Essex, but and there's some walks there from Manningtree going away from the coast, which obviously I'm always drawn to the coast when I get near it, but I do want to go back and do those walks sort of to the west of Manningtree in that area there. So they are on the list, Izzy. Hopefully they will be coming up in the next year or so. What are your top 3 favourite London pubs? I'll put them up from, I answered the top 5 before, didn't I? So that is in the previous video. Maybe I just linked to that, but yeah, it depends, it's subjective. My personal ones are ones that are close to here. I started drinking the Red Lion in Leytonstone. There you go, have that. Red Lion, Leytonstone. I really like, Central London. Do I have a favourite pub in Central London? No, really, probably the Chandos or the Princess Louise. Princess Louise has been closed for a bit, and I really like the Fitzroy Tavern as well. So have one of those. Tom says, as a northerner, I'm fascinated by London and its history, and I love your videos. Are there still any old shops below ground in Oxford Street? As I've heard they are under Selfridge's store, and I'm sure they were used on Malcolm McLaren's programmes, The Ghosts of Oxford Street. I would love to see more videos and read books and hear more photos about this. We already talked about. That's a good question. That is a great, if you can find that programme, I imagine it's probably on YouTube, The Ghosts of Oxford Street, Malcolm McLaren. I mean, there's plenty of shops in Oxford Street that have basements, where you go down into the basements. A lot of the big department stores all have basements in Oxford Street. Other than that, if you mean shops that only exist beneath ground, I don't know of any off the top of my head, actually. So that's really well worth looking into. Maybe I should do a kind of Malcolm, maybe I should recreate that video, recreate the Malcolm McLaren video, that would be great. And Leslie says, areas I'd like to see highlighted. Now this is a very apt question actually. He would like to say, he gives this big list: Alexandra Palace, Muswell Hill, Kenwood, Cockfosters, Barnet, etc. Cockfosters is in a video, Leslie. You've betrayed the fact that you haven't watched that video, but Cockfosters is in a couple. If you include the London Perambulator, that's in, but my first London Loop video ends at Cockfosters. Thank you for your films. Anyway, what I was going to say is that I'm going to film a walk tomorrow, and so I may well do around the area around Crouch End, Alexandra Palace, Muswell Hill. I've kind of got a bit of a feeling to go up there. The land of the dead, I call it in my book. Brian says, are you going to return to Carshalton? I did Carshalton, I sort of started my River Wander walk at Carshalton. It's not on the top of the list, I'm going to be honest with you, Brian. The honest thing is, yes, I would love to return, but so many other places I haven't been to at all that I want to walk, that I think Carshalton will be quite low down the list. I hate to be so brutally honest, but that is just the truth. Deck says, have you heard of the Cuckoo estate in West London? My wife tells me her mother came from there, and I'd love to know more about it. Never heard of it. We'll probably look into that. Sounds really interesting. Mark says, could you pick your favourite street in central London? Impossible, really. I always really loved the Kingsway. When I was living abroad, when I was living in Australia, and I wanted to imagine being back in London, I would walk up the Kingsway to High Holborn and then along Southampton Row up to Russell Square. Yeah, so there you go. Have that as an answer. Look, and this is this massive development they're doing on Oliver Road, Leighton, right near. The Leighton Orient Ground is just there. And that was a place called the Score Centre. It was like open air pitches. There was a beach volleyball place there where those flats are going up. That was, I think, built with Olympic money 10 years ago. And now it's this massive new development, a big public square. Well, public, I'm not sure it is public actually. A lot of these places are actually private estates, but yeah, it's massive housing development with some sort of retail on the ground floor. Kind of really changes the nature of this little road here, doesn't it? I love this this maze here in Coronation Gardens. I always used to come down here with the kids. And I think this is in my book, This Other London. If not, I might have to work it into the new one. But the Phillybrook runs near here, and I made the link between mazes as kind of, they're supposed to be linked in a way to pagan worship, aren't they? They exist a lot in mythology. And you have an underground river and a maze. There's a lot going on here, isn't there? Lisa asks, do you ever give lectures or talks around the London area? Is there a website we can find out when and where you are speaking? That is not a planted question. I do, Lisa. I usually do a few a year. I'm doing one actually in March for the West Essex Heritage Club. I think I'm doing that in Upminster, Hornchurch area. I will post this information on my blog, thelostbyway.com, and I also post it to Instagram as well. So go to one of those two places and that's where I'll post that information. Thank you. I'll be doing a lot more this year to promote my book as well. Moved to a different bench now. And Dazza, I think that's how it's pronounced, says, what's the furthest you can walk without stopping? You often mention pubs as you pass them, and I often wonder if you stop off at them. I try not to stop off at pubs. I have done occasionally, during a walk I should say, I have done occasionally in the summer when I've been really thirsty and I've needed to have a stop and refuel. I did it when I went to the source of the River Lee in the summer and it was like 32 degrees and I stopped to have a couple of pints inside the pub out of the sun. It was amazing. So I try not to because I like it as a reward at the end and it just kills the energy. I don't like to stop at all for more than about 15 minutes. The furthest I have walked in the day is that I've recorded, it was 32 miles. That was right up the Lee Valley. I would say I could have done more that day actually, but I got as far as the trains and it was late at night. It was about 9:30 at night, midsummer. So I could have walked another 5 or 6 miles in terms of my body, but then I would have been in the middle of nowhere at 10:30 at night with no real way of getting home. So I stopped there because there was a train station. Malcolm says, maybe your wife can help with this one. How long do you think it will be before Barking Riverside in the East End generally becomes the eastern suburbs of London? My wife is Australian and Sydney has an area called the eastern suburbs. Quite a long time, Malcolm. Bearing in mind, we haven't been back to Australia for 20 years, so I'm assuming the eastern suburbs hasn't changed in nature. I think Barking Riverside, I don't know what it will become. It's interesting to see what that area will become. I can't see it becoming the eastern suburbs. For those of you who don't know, the eastern suburbs is kind of quite arty, and it's where sort of young arty people lived. That was when I lived there. That was what it was like. Yeah, I'm not sure that is the intended direction for Barking Riverside. I think it's probably more aimed at families and stuff, but who knows? It could do. It could do. I think, you know, maybe people would prefer it to become the new Kreuzberg or something like that. Ian says, due to your obvious passion, do you ever have a tinge of personal sadness or fear that the wonderful history, architecture and integral history of London's myths and legends that make London such a fascinating subject are simply lost on the current generation? Found you in lockdown? No, I don't. I generally try not to feel sadness and fear as a whole. I think the essential elements of London are really persistent. And if you think about the way London's changed over 2,000 years, there's something about it which always is retained and lives on. And I don't think that's going to go away. I think they can build as many tower blocks like this behind me as you like, and the developers can come in, make a quick buck and leave again, and London will just carry on. It's where you, in a way, brings you back to the Ben Aaronovitch stories, don't you, with the deities and the rivers. There's something in the soil here, something in the topography of London. They can't change the shape, the physical shape of London. I think that's where London's essential spirit is drawn from in a lot of ways. And we're going through a phase at the moment where it's definitely changing in a way which is quite distinct from its past, but even so, I think the spirit will live on. So I don't, and the younger generation are just as interested in these things as we are. I don't see that. There's a lot of interest in it from the younger generation. I get stopped by people all the time who want to talk about this stuff. So no, I'm generally optimistic, Ian. So that's the way I feel about it. What's your favourite walk in Buckinghamshire? Says Snazzy. My favourite walk in Buckinghamshire. That's a really good question. It's going to be around where I grew up, around High Wycombe, Woburn Green, the South Chilterns. It would probably be in that area between Woburn Green and Knotty Green, going up through Cutthroat Wood. Difficult to go through now. A lot of it's been taken over by private landowners and they've restricted access. But I'll link below to the walk I did to celebrate the 100 episodes of my walking vlog series, and that is my favourite walk in Buckinghamshire, I'd say. Thank you for that question. Or is it near the Thames? Oh, it's a good question though. Lots to investigate in Farnham, Aldershot area, John. Have you visited Waverley Abbey? Thanks for your great walk, Michael from Aldershot. No, never considered it, Michael. I'll add it to the list. I think it's unlikely that it will be this year, but who knows? Sometimes a seed like that is planted and I just have to then follow through on it. What I like about this phase of the questions is there are some that are sort of from the left field, and it's quite enjoyable for me to answer things that aren't just, you know, your favourite park or your favourite pub in London. As much as I love answering those questions, and Ed asks, what's your, what does he say? What's the actual wording of it? He says, what's your most memorable encounter or meeting with a celebrity? I love that. It's probably going to be, and it's a story I tell people sometimes, you know, in the pub. I've got a couple actually, but it's probably when I went out for dinner with Morrissey once, back in the days when I was working as a development producer, very early on, coming up with ideas for TV programmes or film documentaries, and I pitched an idea for a documentary celebrating the 25th anniversary of the first Smiths album, it would have been, I guess. And anyway, it got to the point where I ended up going to LA for a meeting or something, and then I got out of the cab when I arrived and they went, jump in the shower, you're having dinner with Morrissey in an hour. I was like, what? And I was very new to this type of world, very new to that type of work. That's why it's such a memorable sort of experience, because I wasn't really used to that kind of thing. I just literally come up with the idea one Sunday afternoon at home, written it on my computer, emailed it off. So I didn't expect to end up in an LA restaurant having dinner with Morrissey, and jet lagged. And that became a very memorable evening. It wasn't just me and him, there was like 5 people there, and we spent the evening. We ended up going back to, was it Sunset View Apartments or something like that, and drinking. He wanted to drink vodka, and I had to sit there drinking until like 3 in the morning, having just done a flight from London. That was really memorable. Probably the one closest to my heart is when I went to watch West Ham and this relates to a question that's coming up actually. I went to watch West Ham once. I ended up in the kind of one of the entertainment areas, and I think it was just after the match had finished, so people were still filtering their way through to the bars, and the only other person in the room was Ian Rush, and I grew up idolising Ian Rush in the glory days, Liverpool's glory days. Just me and Ian Rush in this room. Was like, well, I didn't want to be a kind of like a fanboy, but at the same time it would have been awkward not to speak to him, so I had a lovely chat with Ian Rush about the match just when Mario Balotelli was playing for Liverpool. I thought, oh my God, I'm stood here discussing Liverpool strikers with Ian Rush, and he's such a lovely bloke. And he was like really kind of earnestly discussing, because Liverpool were having some problems up front at the time, just really earnestly discussing, the performance of Mario Balotelli and how he saw Liverpool's striking situation being resolved. That was amazing. That was amazing. That was better than doing with Morrissey. Sorry, I'm being a weirdo answering questions. Oh, right, sorry. This is a really windy spot, but I really like the light here. These are some new tower blocks that were built right here on the edge of Leighton, near the spot that I said I wanted to go to check what happens with the water. And what was really lovely then is, as I was answering one of the questions, I could see this lady just looking at me. And anyway, it turns out she's not only a viewer of the videos, which is always lovely to meet people who watch the videos, but also she works in flood risk management. She goes, oh look, I love your videos, and I watch the videos, and we watched them during lockdown when we couldn't go out, so my Lost Rivers walks were useful there. Isn't that really delightful? I love that idea with people that have a proper professional skill and real proper knowledge of the environments I'm walking around and waffling about, find the work useful, even if it's just they take the visuals and find the visuals useful. That's really, really lovely. Right, I'm going to answer some more questions in this very windy but actually well lit spot, and it's 4:15, and I still want to edit this video and get it online Sunday evening today, which is great. Now, leading on from the celebrity question, because that might, to some of you might have gone, hang on, that doesn't make any sense. There's a couple of questions I really enjoyed. Let me try and find where they are. There's so many questions. I'm not actually going to get through all of these today, unfortunately. Do you know what? I think I'm going to come out and do videos like this more often, because someone else just stopped. Yanni just stopped to talk to me now, and he runs barefoot, and he stood here barefoot, and he's been running around up to Stoke Newington and back barefoot. And I said, you must step on some terrible things running around here. And he goes, well, no, it's all right. In the mountains it's difficult, but running around here is fine. Isn't that amazing? The people you meet, what a day it's been lovely. So following on, someone said, what's your favourite, most memorable celebrity encounter? And then someone said, what's your opinion of your mate Russel Brand? Now he is the new Alex Jones. And why did you stop working with Russell Tinfoil Hat Brand? I love that. What I would have done if Russell, I think he's in America at the moment, I would have just rung him and asked him. It would have been quite funny. I think he did, in one of his videos, put on a tinfoil hat, so I think he showed a degree of sense of humour about that. What's the tinfoil doing, by the way? I don't know. Anyway, regardless. So that's quite interesting. I might have skipped this on another Q&A, but seeing as Russell is in the new book, and I'm using this video as an opportunity to talk about the new book quite a bit, aren't I? As well, because we are going to end the walk over the road from where I'm stood now and look at this area where the Filly Brook and the Dagenham Brook met, and the young lady I spoke to had a little bit of information about that. But anyway, Russell was in the new book because he was involved in some campaigns that I was involved in around this area here, and so the campaign to save the New Era estate in Hoxton is recorded in the book, and Russell was involved in that and got me involved in it. I've known Russell for about 24, I was working out this morning, 24 years. So obviously some of you would have been thinking, why are people asking you about Russel Brand? Well, that's the reason. We've been mates for about 24 years. I first met Russell in early 99, and we were working on a kind of comedy sketch show at the Riverside Studios in Hammersmith together. And we got on, he was really young then, I guess he's about 4 or 5 years younger than me actually, saying that. And so we've been mates ever since, to one degree or another. And so asking me what my opinion on it and why did I stop working with Russell? Well, I worked with Russell on and off for a long time. We used to do shows together back then in pubs. I don't think you mean that side, do you? And then actually a few years later I went to work for his production company, and I did that for a few years. That's the Morrissey thing that comes up. The idea was an idea I pitched for Russell's company. Russell and Morrissey had a relationship. They were sort of mates, so it was kind of strange. That's how that came about. and Russell was at that dinner with Morrissey in LA. And I've worked with him on and off on a number of occasions anyway. I had a more coherent answer to this question in my head. It's really windy here. And I finally stopped working with him for the final time. I think it's probably about 4 sort of periods of time when I worked with Russ. And the final one would have been in 2016, when he took a big break from social media. He took a year off. So I haven't worked with him since then, since early 2016. So that was it. That just naturally, in each of those occasions, by the way, they just sort of naturally came to an end. And on one occasion, it was because I got a book deal, for example, and I wanted to write full time. Wow, it's really windy. I think the mic's going to be okay because I'm shielding it from the wind. That's a bit of a production tip there. The wind is hitting my back and not the mic, I hope. I don't really watch his YouTube videos now. I'll be totally honest with you. I don't really watch them because I don't think they're aimed at me. He's doing really well on YouTube, isn't he? I think that's my opinion of it in a way. And it comes in with the tinfoil hat thing. I don't think Russell is a tinfoil hat person. I think he's gone on the journey that a lot of kind of people that are into, in inverted commas, spirituality gone into, like Russell's bang into his recovery, which he takes very seriously because he had big addiction problems, right? And I remember young, troubled Russell, and that's been part of his journey. And it's interesting, during that very long answer to the question, I was giving a really long rambling answer to the question about what I think of my old mate Russell Tinfoil Hat Brand. That was in the question. The camera cut out and I didn't realise. It's enough of that. I'm going to show you something incredible behind me here, and it's the River Brook, Leytonstone's Lost River, and they've really cleared away the stuff from around it so you get quite a good view of it. You have to be careful down here because there are some deep holes down here that you can fall down. But look, there's the Brook. There's the Brook. Can you see that? That's Leytonstone's Lost River, really running clearly above ground along its culvert. Isn't that amazing? And that's where it goes under that brick arch there and goes underground. Now, what I don't really know is where it goes next. And this is what I tried to put it in the book the other night, actually, and wondered why I'd left it out, because I walked through here in the first chapter. So over there near that big Leyton sign, they call the bird box sign, because I think they are bird boxes. I think that's one giant bird box spelt out as the letters of Leyton. That's where I need to go. And I'll answer a few more questions up there. But there's so much traffic, isn't there? So in this rough bit of land here, by the bird box, and there is water down there. You can see it on Google Earth and Google Maps. You can actually sometimes see it with the naked eye. And I'm not sure what it is and what relationship it has to the Brook, which is over there, and the Dagenham Brook, which is just the other side of those allotments there. And now I did wonder whether this was the continuation of the Brook or whether it has something to do with the Dagenham Brook. Neither of those I don't think are true. I think the Brook must run underneath the Eurostar sidings over there and make its confluence directly with the Lee. And the Dagenham Brook, I saw on the sort of satellite view, or the aerial view of this area on Google Maps, that you can see the point where the Dagenham Brook makes its confluence with the Lee on the other side of Spitalfields Market over there. So I don't know what this is. It doesn't seem to be a remnant of the old water treatment works either. Once again, I'm not going to be able to answer all the questions, so it looks like there might have to be a part 3, because there are some amazing questions here. I love this one from Aidan, and he says, "Hi John, during the Great Fire of London, Samuel Pepys famously buried his wheel of Parmesan cheese and wine in his front garden. Were there to be another similar event, which food and drink would you bury in your front garden?" Well, that's really, I don't really hold precious things. Do you know what it would be? I would bury my favourite coffee with my pour over coffee making stuff. That's the thing that I live by. And my pour over coffee in the morning is what gets me through the day, to be honest with you. That would be, and maybe leave some crisps as well. And I like this question as well. Sorry, I've got my gloves on, it's really difficult to scroll on my phone, from Jim, sorry. And Jim says, "John, I live in Northumberland, but have occasion to be in Londinium at least a couple of times a year, and I've often had an afternoon to spare. What's an essential 2-hour walk?" And that's a really interesting question, actually. And I think if you had to give an essential 2-hour walk, you're not going to leave central London if you're visiting for the day. So I would say, if you could do a circuit depending on where you start, if you are at Liverpool Street Station and you go walk down through the city, stop at a few of the churches, and then if you then went over London Bridge, up around a little bit of Southwark, up Borough Road, and then go maybe don't go as far as the Elephant and Castle, then cut through to the Imperial War Museum. Oh no, you wouldn't do that. So go up Borough Road, sorry, do a bit of Borough High Street, through Borough Market, walk along the South Bank, but try and take some of the back streets, wind your way around, go as far as Waterloo, cross over Waterloo Bridge, then up through Covent Garden, up to Holborn, up this might be stretching a little bit, and then up to Bloomsbury, cut through Bloomsbury, heading back east. And these are all of this territory, I think pretty much of it is covered in walks, apart from the South Bank, of course. And then loop your way back round to Liverpool Street via sort of Coram's Fields, that kind of area, then cut down, follow down the River Fleet, back down to the city that way, to St Paul's. That might be slightly more than 2 hours, but do a version of that. Here's a really lovely question to see this come up. I've been thinking about it recently, actually, and it's from Neil, and he says, are you going to implement any more ventures and adventures in topography stuff with Nick Papadimitriou, my old buddy Nick, who I made the London Perambulator film about, which if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. I know I made it, but it's about Nick and his work. And that period of time of working with Nick, collaborating together, which really goes from about 2005 to 2011, about 6 years really, was a really wonderful period of, you know, finding someone else who loves doing this as much as I do. But you know, Nick, an amazing character, and I miss walking with Nick. Every time I go out and make one of these videos and do one of these walks, I think about Nick. You know, particularly when I was down doing the River Shuttle recently and things like that. I really miss that, and I would have loved to have brought the series back. We did try in 2014, and we recorded an episode that we never finished around Crossness. We got invited into Crossness. I shared some of that audio with the channel members on here and with my patrons on Patreon. Yeah, it's just been very difficult to make it happen again. And Nick was very much focused on his writing, and I think there was a period of time when he was less interested in topography. Another person did ask actually how Nick is, and hopefully I'll be able to do an update. Maybe we can do something together soon. We did a little walk along the Clitterhouse Brook when I just randomly went to visit him, and just bumped into him near his flat, and he said, come on, we'll walk the Clitterhouse Brook, and it was lovely. Really, really lovely. And that was just before the pandemic, and I've not actually seen Nick since the pandemic. We've spoken on the phone, we've exchanged text messages, but you know, he's doing okay, Nick's doing okay, and there'll hopefully be more to follow on that subject this year with a bit of luck. I'm now actually going to end there and go home, finish editing this video and get it online today, Sunday evening. It will be a bit late, so when you're watching this Sunday night, you'll know why, because it must be, what time is it? It is, my fingers won't work on my phone. It is now 4:45. Thank you so much for all your questions. Sorry I haven't answered all of them yet. I will keep coming back to them from time to time and try and get through all of them. I massively appreciate you watching the videos and spending your time watching and commenting and everything. Massively appreciate the support I get on Patreon and through channel memberships, and everything, every comment, every thumbs up, every view is enormously appreciated. Every view of every video is massively appreciated. And I know some people very kindly say, please don't stop. There's no way I'm going to stop doing this. I love making these videos. I love taking you along with me. And like I say, thank you so much. And as I have to sign off in the traditional way, even though it's not been a traditional video, I look forward to seeing you on the next walk, wherever that may be. And there were questions about the mugs and the t-shirts. I will sort that out. I'm sure you're aware, like, there's been a big problem with cost of living and supply chain stuff, and the cost of making that stuff now is become really, really high. And so I'd have to set it at a price which is higher than I'm massively comfortable doing, particularly on the mugs. I think they're too expensive. But I will try and resolve that sooner rather than later.